Strong looks different for each of us, and it's time to put focus on our unique journeys that get us there. This space, created weekly, is for athletes to improve their mindset in order to better navigate challenges that come up in sport and in different seasons of life. On this show, we ask the questions that lead to better answers and have the conversations that truly matter. This is the Becoming Your Strong podcast. Hey, you guys, welcome back to another episode of the Becoming Your Strong podcast. This week, I have a guest that I've been waiting to have on the podcast for so long. Most of you know him as my boyfriend. I talk about him all the time. But Dave, welcome to the Becoming Your Strong podcast.
It's awesome to finally be on the podcast instead of just hearing it recorded in the background. I'm very excited.
So every single week I do a listener shout out or just Becoming Your Strong moment of the week. And Dave was easily going to be it regardless of whether or not he was on it. But I'm lucky enough to actually do an entire episode with him. And the moment that I want to shout out is the big reason why we're on the podcast is he just completed 40 miles of the Collegiate Peaks Trail Run, which if you guys don't know what it is one of the harder trail runs out there in Colorado. And he did a phenomenal job off of very little training. We're going to talk all about that and just the journey that he went through, some massive takeaways. But before we jump into that, I know a lot about Dave, but I want to give our listeners an opportunity to learn a little bit more about him. So honey, why don't you tell the listeners not just fitness stuff, but tell us more about like you and where'd you come from? Who are you?
Cool. Well, this is my own fault because I wanted to know more about previous guests. And so now I have this question flipped on me. It's always a little tricky to kind of come up with those things, but I made a quick little list. One of the coolest places I've ever been is Ghana, which is in West Africa. I went for 3 weeks in college. It was such an awesome experience. Absolutely loved it and would love to travel more. I am freakishly good at catching food in my mouth. I actually won a talent show also back in college. We won like $500 worth of gift cards for throwing food all throughout an auditorium. And I'm just still freakishly good at that for some reason. I love to write. I actually just finished writing a couple of little short stories about some adventures that maybe will come up later in the podcast, maybe not. But I just love to write little poems, little stories. I'm a minimalist. I really don't love physical things. I'm more about experiences and like to keep things super simple. I am very emotional and I cry a lot. We'll get into that in a little bit when I talk about the race that we experienced this weekend. And I love hugs, and I'll leave it at that.
He gives the best hugs, folks. The absolute best hugs, which is one of the many reasons that I enjoy him. So
it takes two to tango.
It takes two to tango. And now that you guys have had a speed date session essentially with Dave and now know all the amazing things about him, Dave, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your fitness background and sort of how you made it into this journey of overall like endurance-based sports?
Sure. So my fitness journey probably started when I was very young, playing a lot of team sports, I think as a lot of people do. Baseball, basketball, soccer. I even did gymnastics for a couple of years. One of our neighbors growing up were part owners, and they coached at a gymnastics gym nearby. And I still think gymnastics is one of the most fun things. And I'm so happy that my parents encouraged me to do that when I was younger. So gymnastics, baseball, basketball, soccer, played 1 year of football, was not aggressive enough for football. I didn't want to hit other people enough. So I wasn't great at football. So that was just a 1 year
thing. He's a lover,
thing,
folks.
I loved team sports growing up, and played baseball was my number one sport, played just a little bit on a club team in college. And then always also liked just lifting weights and working out, a lot of body weight stuff. And then one time I went on a run with a friend in college and I got lost and I ended up running 7 miles accidentally. And I was like, oh, that was pretty cool. And then I had some people right after college talk about a marathon. And at that point, I still didn't know how long a marathon even was. So when I realized it was 26 miles, I was like, well, I accidentally ran 7 on no training. So I'm wondering if I could train for 26. So I got into distance running. So I did a lot of marathons, kind of just skipped the whole 5K, 10K half marathon thing, just went right to the marathon. The distance always just intrigued me. I was always curious how much further I could go, and I was never really worried about how much faster I could be. So I got into that, and I ran quite a few marathons over the course of a couple years. Actually did a quick little 2-year stint trying out triathlons because I got, I think, a little burnt out with running, and I wanted to try something else. And so I figured let's throw biking and swimming in there also. Um, Never really learned how to swim, so that was interesting, and took a lot of training to get comfortable being in open water. For those of you that have done triathlons, I think a lot of people could probably relate. And I think there's probably a lot of people too that have never done a triathlon because they don't want to be out in open water. It is,
Me?
yes, it's a little scary. I started with ones in local pools, so you can actually do shorter distance drives where you're just swimming in a pool, which is a great place to start. And then yeah, so I did some triathlons, and then I think I read a book by a guy named Dean Karnazes who ran 50 marathons in 50 states in 50 days.
Good Lord.
Yeah, which sounds absolutely wild. Very privileged to have the opportunity to even attempt that, but a very awesome physical feat. And he also runs a lot of ultra marathons. And so that kind of made me want to run an ultra. So I started doing ultra marathons and did that for a couple of years. Also got burnt out on ultra marathons. Attempted a 100-miler, made it to mile 50. So 50 miles was the most I'd ever done when I first started doing those. And then my cousin was into CrossFit, and he introduced that to me. I kind of stalked it for a few years first because I was like, if to pay $200 a month to go work out, I was like, this seems crazy. And so I was just going to the YMCA and doing regular gym stuff. And then once I finally tried CrossFit, I realized that it was well worth the money. And I loved not only the types of workouts that CrossFit provided, but the community aspect was definitely missing from my life. When you train for ultra marathons, things can get pretty lonely.
Oh, yeah.
You're out there running for long periods of time by yourself. And when you're in the gym working out by yourself, it's just not as fun anymore. And so I love the community of CrossFit. So I did CrossFit for, it's probably been 11 to 12 years now that I've dabbled in CrossFit. I got my level 1 certification in CrossFit. I coached for a year or two at my old gym back on the East Coast before I moved out to Colorado. And now I kind of just do a combination of all of those things. I like to mountain bike. I still like to run ultras occasionally. I do CrossFit-y type stuff, even though I don't belong to a CrossFit gym. Kayla can attest to my all over the place kind of fitness, but I'm very interested in a little bit of everything, even if it's just random gymnastics in a backyard where I'm doing handstands as a party trick. I just love all kinds of different things and exploring all different types of fitness.
Yeah, which is so fun. Like I love the way that you do fitness and honestly the way you do life. It's one of the coolest things about you is you're not on a training program. It's whatever life brings your way. You listen to your heart and you listen to your interests versus me. I clearly do that, but I'm a DECA specialist. It's just what I do. I chose one thing and I said I was going to be really good at it and went all in and it's working really well for me, but I don't think that that's the only way to find success or joy in your life. And so for people that are listening, there's more than one way to skin the cat. And that's what makes, again, just us being in a relationship and getting to support each other a very fun and interesting journey. And I have been really blessed over the last year to have you as my support buddy. You were my number one cheerleader at Deca World Championships, and you continue to do that throughout all these little mini, whether it's a local Deca or whether it's Cirrus Brick stuff. And this weekend, we got to finally flip the switch a little bit, and I got to play the support role, which I have been so freaking excited to do for the longest time. And I know you probably were just as excited for it too, just to put your athlete cap back on and go back out there and grind. But what I loved about this is when I was telling people what you were up to this weekend, they were like, what in the actual world? And I think it's a really cool story of how this came about and the conversations that we had around the Collegiate Pete's Trail Run. So do you just want to share at a high level, like how did this come into your awareness and ultimately why did you decide to do it?
Yeah. I think that anybody who's done certain things in the past, if you've had just at least one good experience, that thing never completely leaves your mind. And I feel like that's kind of what ultra running has been. I remember very distinctly, I attempted a 100-mile race. This was back when I was maybe 25, 26. I attempted a 100-mile race. I made it to mile 50, tapped out. I was kind of bummed out and I wanted another shot. And so I signed up for a training run that was, I think, another 50-mile training run. And I made it about 2/3 of the way. And I remember very distinctly saying, I have never been more excited to quit something in my entire life, is what I said to
Mhm.
my mom and dad. We were getting ready to go to Niagara Falls right after that. And I was so ready to just quit ultra running because I was all in on it.
Yeah.
Um, and I quit it for 10 years, 12 years, whatever it was. But I had good experiences. And so it's always still been in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
And it was crazy how it just took a tiny little question from one of my buddies at the gym that kind of perked my brain up again, and I was curious about it. So my buddy Steve, we're competing at Kayla's mentioned the Sierra Spricks competition. I know on the podcast multiple times. So we were there, and it was one of the nights where a bunch of us got together for one of the workouts. And Steve asked me, we both have talked ultra running before. He's another ultra runner and CrossFitter, so he likes a variety of things too. And he asked me if I had any races coming up. I said no. I asked him if he had any. He mentioned this Collegiate Peaks Trail Run. He didn't really even encourage me to do it or anything like that. I think the main reason why I wanted to do it was because my theme for this year, which I haven't really planned, but it's just kind of started to emerge on its own, is I want to be outside more and spend more
Mhm.
time in the mountains. We live in Colorado. It's such a beautiful place. And over the last year or two, I've done a lot of DECA and high rocks and stuff inside of buildings and in gyms. And there's been some great challenges, but I just don't like being inside working out all the time. I want to be outside working out. And so when he mentioned, another ultra run, I'm like, man, I've had some good experiences in the past, and the trails in Colorado are beautiful. I was like, I want to be outside more. Here's a perfect opportunity to challenge myself with something
Yep.
outside instead of inside. And 2 or 3 days after he had just mentioned it, I was like, hey, I just signed up. And he was like, there's actually a 25-mile option and a 50-mile option. And I just went for the 50-mile option.
Yeah.
And decided to challenge myself. The 25 for me, it's just to finish 25 wouldn't be super challenging for me at my current fitness level. And I could put a time goal on it and could have made it challenging that way. But going back to what I said earlier, I've always been more curious about how much further can I take myself and not how much faster can I go. And so I was worried I'd get done 25 and had a good time and been like, I kind of want more of that. So I
Totally.
just signed up for the 50 to give myself at least the opportunity that when I finish 25 and have to then turn around and go back the other way, I have that option to do that. And it would be more of a challenge.
Yeah. How many weeks did you have of training, Dave?
Well, I think it was about 5 weeks from the race when I signed up. My training got cut a little bit short. I had, another fun fact about me. I have one less tooth than I had 2 weeks ago. Fun fact. So I had a tooth extracted. I had an infection in my jaw gum area that was pretty bad. I didn't actually realize it, but had a tooth removed. And so that kind of took some training away. So I don't know, maybe 3.5 weeks ish of kind of training last minute. Which if you're thinking about running a 50-mile race, folks, give yourself a little more time than that. 3.5 weeks is not ideal, but I leaned into some of the fitness I already have, and I just
Yep.
like to challenge myself, and I went for it.
Yeah. And I bring that up for two facets. One, obviously, to your point, if you're going to do something like that, try to plan ahead and you can learn from Dave's mistakes here is not try and do something of that volume and that intensity off of a couple weeks of training. But the other thing too is like, you just got to listen to your gut. You got to listen to your heart. When the opportunities come your way, it'll never be at the right time. You're never going to be 100% ready. Nothing is ideal. And I think we always wait for things to be perfect in order to take the leap, in order to go and do the thing. And I think this was just such a beautiful example of doing everything but that, of like, I'm not ready for this, but like, why not me? Why can't I? And I think that you exemplified that incredibly with what you did have, what you did bring to the table this weekend. So let's just talk about the journey to the race. I mean, even in the car ride leading up, we didn't know if it was nerves, we didn't know what was going on, but your stomach started to feel off. Like just the 24 hours leading up to the race, up until even like the first part of the race. Like I just want to hear it from your perspective, because I was watching the whole thing, but I wasn't you, so I want to know about it too.
Yeah. I typically, I'm the kind of person that doesn't really get super excited about things until they're almost right in my face and about to happen. A lot of people ask me, if I have a big trip coming up, they'll ask you a week ahead of time or 3 days beforehand if you're really excited. And I'm honest with them and I say, not yet. I'm just kind of I do like to live in the moment and be very present with the people that I'm around. And so if I have 3 more days of being with people and other experiences to enjoy before that big trip or that big race or whatever it is. So I usually don't get really excited until right when it's happening. This one I think was a little bit different because it was kind of looming in the back of my head, partially because not just was it a physical challenge, but like we were just talking about, it's I usually like to plan things ahead. And I'm sure Kayla can tell you many stories of how I am very particular and like to be very planned and write things out. Even before we started this call, I had to write down the little fun facts about me because I was afraid I was going to forget them and I want to get them all in and all that. So that's typically how I approach life. And so this one was like, let me just step out of my comfort zone, sign up for a race that I'm not really ready for. And some of the coolest moments, like some of the best lessons in life and the coolest experiences, and you find that you meet some of the most random people. The way that I got into ultra running was, this is kind of going off of a tangent, but it's kind of a cool thing. The way I got into ultra running, the first one I ever did was actually an unofficial race because it was canceled because there was a tropical
Mm.
storm coming through and they lost their medical people because there was a state of emergency declared. And so but somebody decided to do it anyway and emailed everybody, and we all just showed up and they rerouted the course and we got downpoured on in a tropical storm and we all ran whatever distance. Our watches didn't work anymore because they were so soaking wet. But that was my first like foray into ultra running, and you couldn't plan for anything. None of us knew what was going to happen. And I met some of the coolest people, and the way the community rallied together was just, it was just crazy cool. And so choosing to do something that's way out there is just, it just brings about some really, really special moments. And when you plan for something and have everything already dialed in, like those crazy moments don't always happen because,
Mhm.
yeah. So didn't really answer your question, but
No, that's okay. That's
yeah.
okay. So let's talk about the morning of. We're getting ready. Things are now getting real. It's the moment. And I remember you looking at me being like, shit, this is happening. I'm like, uh-huh. Here you
Yeah.
go. Here
Yeah,
comes
we
the
were
risk
we were a
again.
little rushed. We didn't quite give ourselves enough time in the morning, I think, to get ready, and that was on me. I was just like, oh, 30 minutes, I'll be able to get ready and get breakfast and do all that stuff, and probably wasn't enough time. So I actually didn't have quite a bit of time in the morning to really think about much
Yeah.
because we were kind of rushed to get ready. But once we got to the start line, yeah, I remember what you're talking about, and I was just like, babe, they're not going to hold up the race for me. Like they're calling 50 milers to the start cage. And I'm like, I just finished my poop and I haven't warmed up yet. And I'm like, they're not going to wait for me. Like it's time to go. Um, and I said all of that mostly in jest because that was the whole way the race came about to begin
Mhm.
with 5 weeks ago when I just randomly signed up for it. So, um, so we had to just do it. But, I I wasn't as honestly, I wasn't as nervous for this one as I have been for other ones, partly because I think the other ones I put more pressure on myself.
To do better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to perform better. And I think one of the valuable things you can kind of take away from this is that not every race or competition you sign up for has to be, the goal doesn't always have to be, I want to do better. I want to show my fitness is better. I want to prove to whether it's myself or other people or whatever it is that I'm fitter and I'm faster and I'm stronger. It doesn't have to be about that. And this
Right.
race, I really was one of the first ones I think that I can really remember this vividly that I didn't have a performance goal really in mind. Of course, it would be awesome if I finished the entire race and ran 50 miles. Of course, that would be amazing. But that wasn't really ever the goal. And it's okay to make up your own goals, and they can be anything when you go and approach something and sign up for something. It doesn't have to always be a performance based goal. So I was less nervous about this one because of not having such a performance goal.
Yeah. No, I love that. You don't always have to go out to win or to say, like, this wasn't a waste of my time. Like, I think that's a big thing, right? Is for those of us that seriously train for things, is we're like, well, we have to show that this training was worth it in some way, shape, or form, our efforts, the money investment that we spent on this. And it's like, No, I actually remember earlier this year, or maybe it was when we were setting goals like in December, is we just wanted to like do a little bit of everything. Just do things that were not like it always has to be competitive. It always has to be kind of like this benchmark. It just we just want to have fun, find some freaking joy in the journey. And I think that this was a really awesome race for you to have just to completely fall in suit with that. So what about the first 25 miles? Because I saw you at mile six ish, and then I saw you at mile 25, and you were looking stellar at mile six. You were moving really well. You were dialed in and focused still. So, like, how did things change from the first 6 miles to maybe, going into that 25-mile turnaround?
Yeah. One of the coolest things I love about ultra running is that it is a roller coaster ride. You go through so many ups and downs, and it's a very emotional experience. And just being able to lean on that in other areas of life is really cool. But yeah, I felt great when the race started. My legs felt strong. I was really excited about, okay, like, and we talked about not having tons of training leading into it. With the surgery that I had about a week and a half before the race, like I wasn't able to really do much intensity and that kind of stuff. And so I wasn't sure how my body was going to feel. But it felt pretty good. And I was in super great spirits at mile six. I wasn't actually expecting to see Kayla. And so that was a huge surprise when I did see her there. Some of the aid stations were pretty remote, and so I didn't really think I'd get to see her that much. So I was excited to see her. And I felt great. And then somewhere around, I would just call it around mile 10 somewhere, my stomach didn't feel the greatest. It wasn't painful. It wasn't like a really big issue, but it just felt off. And I was still eating and drinking a decent amount. I was trying to stay mostly with gels and liquids, which I usually don't do. I usually have more solid food. I wasn't sure if that was an issue, but stomach was just off. And then as I kept going mile after mile after mile, got closer to mile 15, 16, the stomach really started to turn. And I had a nice little stretch with my buddy Anthony. It was his birthday. He was there celebrating his birthday, running 25 miles. They started a little after we did, so he caught up to me. And we got to hike a big section together, and we just got to know each other a lot better, which was awesome. And it was actually one of the things that I had, I guess you could even say, was a goal of mine this weekend, was to spend time with other people. And he's an awesome guy, and I've only really seen him in the gym a handful of times. So I was really excited to get to know him outside of the gym and spend some time, and got to know more about him, which was really cool. And we shared some couple awesome miles in the middle there. But once you get back to kind of being on your own a little bit, he took off and went to finish strong.
Mm-hmm.
Then I started feeling my stomach again. And so it was really a struggle with my stomach just not acting right. And so anytime I put something in it, didn't feel good. So I struggled with fueling, struggled with the stomach, but had some great moments where I got to spend with Anthony. And then I saw Steve right near, like a couple miles from the turnaround. So he was getting ready to finish 25. I saw him. I told him I wasn't doing great. I could tell he was kind of worried for me, and he was trying to figure out, what can I help you with? He gave me a sandwich, which was absolutely terrible. And even in his words, he said, it's terrible. He's like, it's gluten-free, it's awful, but it's solid food, so maybe it'll help you. And he was right. It was a terrible sandwich, but I ate some, and maybe it gave me a little reprieve. Maybe I just told my mind that it was what I needed. But yeah, it was a bit of a struggle with nutrition in my stomach coming into the 25-mile marker at the turnaround point. So the way the race goes is you get to the turnaround at 25, and then you decide whether you want to reverse the direction and go back out for to attempt another 25 to make it a 50 total.
Yeah. So I saw Anthony. Anthony came in first, then Steve came in second. And I just got like some updates about, the status of you. Anthony said, he's doing good. We walked a good section together. Steve said, I'm a little worried about him. And so I was in this headspace of like, he could go back out or he could not. And regardless, I'm just here to support him. So I had got everything I possibly could ready. I know that it was a game changer that we had cell service almost throughout the entirety of the race. So you were able to send me voice messages, and that was so freaking cool, was just to be able to hear from you and support you, even though I couldn't be like right there. And you came in and you had the high spirits, and it made me laugh. I looked over because So folks, he runs past me and he runs through a parking lot, and then he goes to the start finish line, does the turnaround and comes back. And then at that point he can come to the car and like get, refueled, change of socks, etc. And so I'm sitting there waiting at the car. He already went past me. And it's been like 2 minutes and he's just sitting up there throwing chips into his mouth, throwing some Coke back. I mean, anything and everything, chatting it up with the race people. I'm like, yeah, that's Dave. So I wouldn't expect nothing less from you. But then you came in and we started to, again, wash your feet off, change socks. And I'm like, okay, he's going back out. He's going to do the thing. It looked like you were like physically and mentally in the game to go back out. But I think after talking to you, you weren't necessarily like, hey, I'm feel good about going to do this. So tell me about that moment when you're sitting down there in the chair and you actually had to make the decision, and what ultimately brought you to the decision to go back out.
So what's interesting, there's kind of two parts to this. One is it was very helpful going into the race. I'd said this out loud multiple times, which I think it's very important to do when you have goals or a strategy. Say it out loud, whether it's to your partner, whether it's to your friends, your family, whoever. But I said to Kayla on multiple occasions, I know I said this, I said, I would rather attempt 50 and DNF than just finish 25 and be okay with it, and call it a day. And so I told myself before the race, that's what I wanted to do. And so that helped me make the decision. I did, between miles 20 and 25, I definitely had quite a few thoughts of, man, they're just going to be out to lunch. They're going to be chilling at the Airbnb, just hanging out. I get to chill with everybody. That would be awesome. So I thought about stopping at 25, but I had that in mind before the race. The other thing was more the race dictated than I did, in some ways, but you could stop at 25 and just be a 25-mile finisher if you wanted to. I didn't realize the way it would happen, though, that I needed to make that decision before I got to the finish line. So because I didn't get aid the first time I ran by Kayla and everybody, I got to the finish line. They said, "Are you going back out?" And I was like, well, my people are over there anyway. And so like I had to make the decision at the finish line. And not that I was rushed or put on the spot, but it's like, I wanted to at least get some aid. And because I've done ultras before, I know sometimes when you get some aid, you put on a new pair of shoes, you get some cold water on your face, you get a kiss from your girlfriend, you feel like re-energized and great about it. And you want to go after it. So I was like, I don't know yet until I get over there, but I have to decide now. So I better just do it. So it was really just a quick, yeah, of course I want to at least go see how I feel. So the race kind of dictated some of it. And then knowing beforehand that I wanted it to be a challenge. I didn't want it to be just a fun run. I wanted to really have a challenging experience, and just finishing the 25 wasn't challenging enough for what I was looking for.
Mm-hmm. So I was really proud of you for going back out there, especially because people were like, oh, we don't know if he's going to, and you did. And then like 6 to 10 minutes later, I get a voice message from you after we send you off. Like, oh, I really wanted more solid foods. I forgot the honey stinger waffles. Is there any way you can meet me in a couple miles at the next aid station? So I was like, my number one role for this weekend was to support you. But I had my own fears of like, A, was I going to be able to support you enough? And B, was I going to crash your car?
I just got a new car too. Like, imagine not only is she in a car she doesn't recognize, but it's also a brand new car that not brand new, but a new car that I just bought. And it's off-roading on trails, and it's not really an off-roading type of car. It does okay. And poor Kayla is like, oh my gosh, now like in order to support him, I have to do this. And she's driving in a car she's never been in, who belongs to somebody else. And
and also have no idea where I'm going. Like they don't have exact coordinates mapped out for you. They show you on a map where they're at, but I had to like put on my big girl panties and be like, all right, I'm going to recruit help to get the best navigators I know. And I'm going to go out alone and I'm going to do this thing. And so that was a win for me. That was my strong moment of the weekend was doing that. We had a couple of casualties. Well, I should only say we had one casualty with the car. It wasn't that big of a deal, but regardless, everyone's unscathed. The car is pretty well. But I met you at that point, at that first aid station, about 3 to 3.5 miles in of your second loop. And at that point, you were still doing okay. You had just done a pretty big incline from what I could remember. And I remember we were sitting at the aid station and they were like, okay, the next one's going to close in like an hour. and you had what, like 3 to 4, maybe 6 miles to get through before that next one. I couldn't
Yeah,
remember
four to
exactly.
five, I think.
It was a good stretch, and it was going to be challenging to get in within the hour just based off of how we were currently moving, and just the race profile overall. And so I was like, well, shit, like if he's not going to have any aid, I need to go with him. And so, kid you not, you guys, I literally like plotted out the rest of them. I got the plots for the rest of them, and I drove on the trail. I drove on the trail with the runners, and I just followed him the entire back half of the race. And so I got to be there through every single aid station with him, which was absolutely awesome. But there was one aid station. So let's see, we got to that one, and then we got to the next one, and that's the one where you were dancing and you looked like you were feeling good. You had met Marie at that point. You had met Monica at that point, right? Both of them, I think.
Yep.
Tell me about those people. Or is there anything fun or noteworthy about those conversations?
Yeah. So the couple of people that Kayla just mentioned, they're just random people that are running the race that I've never met before. And I was near the back of the pack, and there weren't too many people behind me, but it's this cool feeling of togetherness that you're all out there experiencing something really hard together. And having conversations with random people can take your mind off of what you're going through and how bad your legs hurt and your stomach's flipping and all this stuff. And it was just cool to just share some memories with them. And I got to the aid station. They'd stayed open. Like, I think I got there 7 or 8 minutes after it was
Yep.
supposed to close, but the people at the race were amazing, and just everybody at the aid stations was awesome. They stayed there later than they were technically supposed to help get us runners that were right at the back to, try to keep going. It wasn't just, like I kept going, and it was far from just my decision, which I think we'll get to in just a
Yeah.
minute. But the people at the aid station stayed open late, and Marie was, I wasn't sure if I was like the last one out on the course, and Marie was already at the aid station, and I was like, oh, hey, you're another runner. And we high five, and she was like, yeah, we're doing this. We're going to make it.
Yeah.
So that was awesome. And then Monica, I saw a little bit after that aid station, and we had talked. She had attempted a 50 miler one time before, had made it to mile 38, had to drop out. This was her second attempt. She was going for it. So we just shared some awesome conversation and got to talk to each other, but it helps take your mind off things. And it's just, to go through stuff with other people is so much more enjoyable than being out there alone.
Oh yeah. And it was fun for me too to watch you come in, had building those relationships and having those conversations, and then they go off. I finish, getting you set, you go off, and I'm driving past them, like cheering them on. They recognize the white Subaru by the end of the race. So that was me in there. But so we got to the next aid station. And again, you were dancing, you were throwing pretzels. I mean, you looked like you were living life large at that point. I had no idea what was really going on. And I think that one was actually a good bit of a mile stretch too. Maybe that was like 4 to 5 miles. Yeah. And I got a message probably about halfway through that leg, and you were like, I'm pulling the plug. Like, it went from dancing Dave to I'm in the hole and I'm done. I can't even move my legs anymore. So like, just talk me through that whole moment. Like, how did you get to that point?
Yeah, I think when you're out there running and you're running a pretty slow pace, especially, your legs get tired, you're just running slower, and you get really excited to be at the aid stations because it's fun to see other people, and you get these fun snacks. And and I knew Kayla was supporting me, so I got to see her at each of these aid stations. It's so much to look forward to. And when you're in the back of the pack, and there was, I mean, the first half of the race, there were so many 25 milers and 50 miler racers. There was just a lot of people. And so there was always people passing you, or you were catching up to people, you were chatting, you were just joking around. But then it got to the point where there wasn't that anymore. A lot of the 50 milers were in front of me. They were getting ready to finish. The 25 milers were done. And so it can be kind of lonely out there, but that's part of why I like running these things, is because you have a lot of time to just spend with yourself.
Oh, so good.
I don't wear headphones. I don't listen to music. There's quite a few other people out there. I don't judge you. If you want to wear headphones, listen to podcasts, whatever. Personally, I just like to not have that in and just let whatever comes to me happen. And that's the emotional part of me. And that's a big part of why I like these things. But I didn't like the course. And so this particular stretch was just, what I didn't like about the course was that it was just a lot of country roads, very wide roads that you could drive on. Caleb, drove a lot of the course to come support me. I like more technical single track stuff. And so it wasn't actually my favorite course, but that's what you get when you sign up for a race without even looking at anything. And so I was struggling with that. I wasn't having fun with that. And then my legs were tired. My stomach wasn't feeling great. And this particular section was just so much hiking uphill. And I just wasn't enjoying myself, and there weren't any people around anymore. And so you do start to just feel lonely, and you're out here like what am I doing
Yeah.
anymore? Like I just can't go any further. That's kind of where my head was at when I sent you a message. Do you want me to tell the people kind of what I said, or
Well, you just told me that you wanted to pull the plug, that you were done. And so here I am. I'm parked at the next aid station. I have no idea where he's at because I drove past him when he was still on his first mile, and I knew that this was a good couple of miles. And so I parked the car and I thought, I was like, he's just out there alone right now. And he's thinking about all the what ifs. He's thinking about all the wrong things. If I could just go out there and be with him, I can calm him down and maybe get him to rethink. So I sent him a voice message. I was just like, just make it here. I'm not going to come and get you. Like, I'm going to stay parked at the aid station and we'll have a conversation when you get back. And what he didn't know as I was running, I started literally like I took the car keys and I started running. And I didn't know how far I was going to run for, but I was just my number one goal was to find him and just to be with him. And so about a mile, maybe a mile and a half, I finally run into him. He found another person on the course. There was someone that was behind him that came trotting by. And why don't you share the funny thing that we keep laughing about?
yeah, so I had no idea she was running towards me. And I didn't tell you this, but I went through a brief like back and forth of, I was actually not mad is the wrong word, but when you said, I'm not coming to get you, why don't we just have a conversation when you get to the aid station? I was like, oh, she doesn't understand. Like, I really am done. And she really should just come get me if she
Yep.
can. And then a couple seconds later, I was like, well, no, I wanted her out there. And I even told her, I'm sure at some point, that like I wanted her, especially near the end, to remind me that don't stop. You're this close. I want
Yeah.
to keep going. And so I told her that that was the role. And now here I am getting, a little upset with like, just come get me. You don't get it. You've never done one of these things. You don't understand. I'm really cooked and I need to quit. So I went through that emotion, but this guy comes up and he was asking if I was okay or if there's anything he could do to help. And then all of a sudden I just peeked up and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's my girlfriend. And then I immediately went, I wish he had the car with her, but we'll take it. um, so it was a nice little funny moment of I told her to bring the car and she didn't listen, but
Yeah. Yeah. So, but again, in my mind, it was like if I was in this situation, it's so much easier. And I know I haven't been through this, but I've been through my own struggle. And it's so much easier in that moment just to sit down and to quit. And I was like, if I was in this and I was so like, guys, he was at the next aid station was mile like 38 and a half. He was 12 miles from the finish line. And I know that like is actually a lot, but like in the grand scheme of things, like 38 out of 50, like he's just so close. I was like, I let me just at least get him to this aid station. Let's see if we could at least get him close to 40. Like I know he's got more in the tank. And so I had to make that decision to go against what you were asking for and to just go find you. And so we walked and you more hobbled and you were kind of delusional at that point. And it was funny. You asked if I'd brought you snacks. And I was like, I had one job and I brought you no snacks. Not only did I not bring the car, but I did not bring any snacks. But
and
we ended
just
up,
real quick to interrupt, just
yeah,
sorry to interrupt, but that was the right decision, folks. So if you
yeah,
are ever supporting someone, whether it's an ultra marathon, whether it's a 10-minute workout, whether it's whatever, she made the right decision. So you should do the same thing, even when someone tells you otherwise.
yeah. And if he was like legitimately hurt, obviously it would have went a different direction. But I knew that you were just in that spot where you just needed to dig yourself back out of the hole. So we ended up hobbling all the way back to the aid station. And during the hobble back, you got a special message from someone. You want to share that?
Yeah. So one of our mutual friends, AJ, shout out to AJ. The guy has this incredible way with words. He's an amazing writer. And then, and when he speaks and every word is intentional. And he sent a voice note, of motivation to tell me to keep going. And he told me a brief little story about him a week or two ago when he was at Toughest Mudder race, and he was at about a similar mile marker to where I was, and
Like
just,
spot on.
yeah, it reminded me of like, that's also where he really, really struggled. And once he got finished one of his laps, the next lap after that was like one of his best of the races, of the entire race. Like, he just, something switched and he was able to turn it around and crush things. And he was trying to get me to go. And I reflected a little bit, like I cried in that moment, just a lot. And AJ and I, like, we're buddies, but I also don't know him all that well. I think we've met each other
Mhm.
twice in person. And we don't talk regularly, but we chat here and there. And I think more than just his words of encouragement, they were awesome and they really hit me hard. But it was the fact that here's this guy that I don't know all that well, but just the amount that he put his life on hold in that moment to be with me and to share that message. And I felt like he was out there with me. And when you feel that, especially from, like, I had Kayla out there, but obviously, like, that's a different feeling. But to have AJ, just, it's Saturday, like, he should be out adventuring, doing his own thing. And here he
Mhm.
is spending time sending me a voice note. So he could have said anything, honestly, and I probably would have gotten emotional about it. But it was just, and it was not just him, but I had so many messages on my phone that were coming through because we had service. Everything was coming through, and
Yeah.
Kayla was relaying things that people were thinking about me and cheering me on. And I got several other voice notes from other people too. And it was just that overwhelming support that you have from really good friends, people you've met a handful of times, and then even some of the strangers you meet on the course. It's
Yeah.
just, it just, I love that feeling of togetherness and community, and people that have your back is awesome. So he helped push me, along with Kayla dragging me physically, to get to that 38 and a half aid station.
Yeah. So we made it to the aid station. He's sobbing. And I could tell he was like, the wheels were turning. And I was like, I think he's going to try and go back out for just at least a few more. I don't know if he's going to make it, but right now it's just one foot in front of the other. And one step is further than not trying at all.
Even
Uh,
somebody at the aid station too, one of the
yeah.
volunteers, kind of looked at me and they asked the question of, so we just need to confirm that you're still continuing, right? Like,
Yeah.
they said it in a very affirming way, even though it was a question, but kind of pushing me to, like, you're going to keep going, right? And I was like,
Yeah.
can't say no at this point. So yeah.
Yeah. So off you went, and I just followed slowly in the car behind you. I started blasting some of your favorite music, and we went for it. It was so much fun. And then, well, I say it was so much fun. It was not very fun for you. Yeah, I was having a good time just like watching you push yourself, and again, just being out in this absolutely beautiful place. And we went up and down a couple of things, and then there was a point where you started hobbling a little bit more and your gait really started to change, and I could just tell you were in so much pain, and I saw you hang your head. And I stopped the car and I immediately knew, it was like, this is it. He's done. And but I felt at peace with it, because I think the last time, like, I heard it in your voice, it was more just like frustration, annoyance, like you just mentally gave up. And this one was like, you gave everything you possibly had. And that's where I was like, you need to come. Like, you did it. Like, you did everything more through and through than what you expected yourself to do today. So
Yeah.
what about that moment?
Yeah, and can we also, like, we got to call this out. The first song that she blasts in the car, she didn't even think about it. She's like, "Oh, what music does he? Oh, I've heard him listen to this song and he likes it." She played "Walking on Broken Glass" by Annie Lennox. And I'm like, is she mocking me right now because I'm hobbling and I look like I'm actually walking on broken glass? She didn't really even think about it that way. But in the back of my head, I'm going, she's mocking me. But it's okay because we're super playful and funny and make fun of each other. And I was like, that's really cute and kind of fun. But yeah, you pretty much hit it spot on. I did quit more mentally previously. And then once I'd made that decision to keep going, you made the great suggestion to use the trekking poles. We were allowed to use them on the second 25 miles of the course. And I wasn't even thinking straight at all, but wasn't thinking about that. And you were like, hey, we got trekking poles. Would that help? And I was like, absolutely. Give me
Yeah.
2 new legs that I can use. And the first handful of steps out of that aid station, I was rejuvenated and I had some help with the trekking poles and I could put some weight on those instead of my legs, and things were feeling decent for a very short period. And then once I still felt just as awful, like a mile down the road as I had previously, even though now I had the help of some more food at the aid station and the trekking poles, it's like, and the music blasting, and like I had all the help that I could possibly get. And
Yeah.
physically, I was still struggling to go up some of the steeper inclines. And so, yes, physically, my body was just about at its breaking point. And I was, because I had pushed through the mental kind of piece previously, and I had already pushed through 20 some odd miles of stomach discomfort, um, that that helped me be at peace with the decision
Hmm.
to pull the plug at that point, because like you said, it was physically, my body was broken down, and there is always a point where I've got other fun things I want to do in life, and I want to be able to go on
Yeah.
more hikes and do other. We've got another competition coming up in just under 2 weeks now, and I want to be able to show up for those things too. So there is always a breaking point where you do need to shut it down, but um, I've also competed a lot, and so I've shut it down too early previously. And sometimes you will shut it down too early, and you'll look back on that moment and go, you know what? I just quit mentally, and I did have more in the tank, and I wish I didn't do that. But just take that with you to the next one. And at this one, I am very content with the fact that yes, physically, I just was completely broken down. And had I continued to go further, I would have possibly hurt myself and
Yeah.
deprived myself of future adventures for the next month or so. And so I was very okay with that decision.
Yeah. Yeah. That it's such a hard line to find and to really balance of like, are you just giving up on yourself? Are you calling it too early, or is this the right decision? And I thank you for sure. Yeah, definitely made the right decision in that point. I felt it. So all of that being said, we've chatted now for over a little over 45 minutes. What was the biggest takeaway that you want people to know after this experience?
The biggest takeaway. Well, I have to. What was kind of cool is that I'll just tell this little story. So, one of my best friends, who lives back in Richmond, Virginia, where I was for many years before I moved to Colorado. Their son is in second grade. His name is William, and he had this project where he just read Flat Stanley, where you draw a flat picture of yourself and put it in an envelope, and you can send it around the world, and Flat Stanley gets to experience all these different places. He wanted to send Flat William to me so that I can take him around Colorado. And there's a little journal that I got, and actually here's Flat William. He loves baseball, so there he is. But I just this morning finished writing all the journal entries, and I took Flat William with me on this race, so he could experience some of Colorado's most beautiful trails and mountains. And what I wrote, I'll just read it to you guys, was this little lesson that I think is a great one for people of all ages, but I especially thought this would be a good one for William. At the very end, I put, today, Flat William learned a valuable lesson. If you want to achieve big, wild, crazy dreams, enlist the help of others. I said a few friends and many others that we had just met helped us cover 40 challenging miles together. So there's an old adage of, if you want to go, what is it? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that was the huge takeaway for me this weekend, that when I was out there alone by myself, I was done. I wasn't going fast or far. And then once I had the help of Kayla and AJ and random Maid State volunteers and Monica and Marie and all the other people that were supporting me, I was able to go further. So enlist the help of others. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Do things with other people, because it's so much more fun together than it is by yourself.
Absolutely. And we thank you for opening up your hearts and allowing us. I know I am very lucky to have been a part of that. That was one of the most incredible weekends that I got to have. So thank you for letting me be a part of that. And thank you to being vulnerable and sharing all of your journey to the listeners. I'm sure they got so much out of it. So,
Of course, I appreciate the opportunity.
yes.